Welcome to this afternoon's Healthcare Project and Change Association's community webinar. And we're joined today by Tibisay Vera. Before we get into the main presentation, I'm just going to take you through a little information about the HPCA and what we've got coming up. Before I get into that, I would like to just encourage everybody just to introduce themselves in the chat. I think it's a really useful way to kind of find out who else is on the call today. So you can also connect with peers, etc. So if you go ahead and do that, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So please keep an eye on the chat anyway, because there'll be some links put in there for us to signpost you to useful resources and such like. So they'll be shared with you. Obviously, if there's anything else that you need, please drop it in there also. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the presentation. And just to let you know that today's session is being recorded and it'll be sent in an email to everybody who registered for the event after the session. So if you can make sure you subscribe to the HPCA, you will ensure that you get a copy of all of these recordings of the sessions that you register to. So upcoming free webinars, will all be posted on the HPCA website. So I will encourage you to go and have a look at the events page on there, and you will see the ones that we have coming up. I believe they will all be for 2025 now after today's session, but please keep an eye on that. And I think there'll be a link in the chat there directly to the events page. As well as community webinars, we do have HPCA training courses. All the information for those, including pricing, course content, etc., will be on the HPCA website. So some of the courses include Becoming a Change Ninja, which is run by Tammy Watchorn. That is a virtual course. And just to let you know that there is a discount available for HPCA client organisational members. So it's always a little bonus if you are an organisational member. We have a Neuroscience for Change one-day in-person workshop, which is run by Joe Stanford, who is the CEO of HPCA. And they're commissioned for teams or organisations individually, and the dates for those are agreed between yourselves, so they will suit you. There's a very nice 20% discount as well for organisational members. Just get that in there. So again, worth having a look at. There is an in-person workshop all around getting started in change management, and that is run by Julie Atkins, who works for NHS England. Those tend to run in Leeds or London. And again, pricing and information is all on the website for that particular course. Again, Joe also facilitates a one-day bespoke workshop, and that includes Lego Serious Play, and that can be run on request. So that's all around understanding neuroscience for leading change, problem solving, and solution planning. Now, in addition to those, we do have an SRO training course. They're running cohorts, virtually. It's a one-day course, and again, there'll be dates coming up for 2025. So information on that, including registration, full course details, pricing, is all available on the training course page. So again, there may be a link coming up to that. Don't worry, I'm nearly finished. Just one more thing about the organisational membership. One of the major benefits of having that is the fact that you will get access to the HPCA hub, and that is the one place where we host the raft of resources, toolkits, guidance documents, and things like that, which is all available for organisational members. So if you'd like more information on that, please have a look at the website, or please drop us an email, and we'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about that. That's it from me for now. Any questions for Tibi, please drop them in the chat throughout the presentation. We'll try and drop them in there. If not, we have allocated time at the end there to have a bit of a Q&A session. So today's guest speaker is Tibisay Vera. She's speaking to us today about neuroscience for positive change. Tibi is the founder of Sparkling Performance and also the author of the PEPE Model. So we're very grateful to have you here today with us, Tibi. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for the introductions, and thank you everyone for being here. It is a pleasure for me to do this webinar, and I want to run it as informal as possible. So please do write, as Jocelyn say, your questions in the chat, and I will try to answer as it goes, unless we have many of them and then we're running out of time. So I wanted to start just to introducing the webinar by an observation I've been having for more than 20 years when I've been working with change. And then when I studied neuroscience, I went back to university and I say, well, what is it? And that is what I want to start sharing with you. And the main sharing, and I'm surely most of you I can see you are working in change. During times of change, we usually see within the environment a lot of resistance. I would probably ask you to put in the chat how many of you usually have resistance, and it comes usually about 80%, 85%, that answer. And also we notice that there is a very toxic environment, not in all cases, but again, statistically come for about 78%, and these statistics have been collected through a lot of times. High volumes of stress is almost like 90%. And as a result of that, during times of change, there is a lot of lack of creativity, which is where we probably need it the most. And we have few frameworks, some of them looking at individual change, some of them are more kind of methodologies of dealing with change. I have just picked up some examples of them. And basically, the idea is, well, let's try to move as quick as possible from either the announcement, the shock, to kind of the integration, if we put it in this way. Now, even if we move quicker and we go into, well, we finish one change, this is usually what we notice after we adapt, or after we integrate one change, or we announce and we complete one change. We usually notice, and I will ask maybe for you to participate, what do you usually notice after that change? I can see here, Jocelyn, I don't know if you would like, or Helen, to put the question here. Probably we don't need to put the question. I will just ask to share in the chat. Anyone, is your experience after we adapt to change, that do we feel like there is cynicism? Do we feel there is disengagement? Do we feel like there is trauma? I would like to see your voting here. If you see in the chat, what would you say? Would you say that based on your experience, do you find trauma, cynicism, disengagement, all of the above? Anyone would like to comment on that? Yeah, cynicism, disengagements, I can see. I will leave this open and you can vote, and then you can come back if you want. But yes, what I notice is usually most of the vote, right? And usually we don't tend to talk a lot about trauma within organizations. But what we know is that after we integrate the change, there is this cynicism that we carry with us. There is this trauma. And this trauma is people who have depending on their experience that they have about experiencing change. This carry forward to a new change. And what we see now, that this is not sustainable anymore when we are going in, when we have high volumes of change and constant change, which is the moment where we are now. So what we realize is that it is not enough now to use all the frameworks that we know, even if they are individual change methodologies. We needed to look at something else. We needed to find something that actually underpin all these methodologies. And within that research, it came is what it is. And it is all about brain plasticity. Why do we carry this trauma, even if we use excellent models, which are there as we saw? Why do we keep this trauma? Why do we keep this cynicism? And that goes against new changes, because that reduces the involvement every time with people getting into change. And brain plasticity, for some of you might have heard about this terminology. All what brain plasticity is our brain have an ability to usually and continuously adapt to any changing environment, right? And this is one of the biggest learned lessons that we that we took from neuroscience. I have seen that people think this is brain plasticity is a great feature that our brain have, which is yes, is good news. The brain will always adapt to change. The brain usually adapt to change. Now the bad news is because the brain plasticity and because that property of the brain of continuously adapting to change, the brain could also adapt to change. And it is what in neuroscience we call maladaptive plasticity. So that is kind of the explanation of why we now know from the brain perspective, actually our brain is physically changing and is creating that cynicism that we were talking about. And that bad adaptation to change is what it takes to all what we've been talking about, right? People feel less motivated, people withdraw, there is no engagement, there is the cynicism. And cynicism is one of the biggest diseases within change, within constant change. It really takes us to poor performance, and we go for lack of changes, sponsors, and so on. And let's not even talk about well-being. So the idea is trying to use that understanding of the brain and the neuroscience to support and to promote what we call active resilience, which is very much a positive adaptations to change. It's very much taking lessons that we have learned about how our brain works and trying to bounce forward. Our traditional concept of resilience, it's about bouncing back. We know from neuroscience perspective now that resilience is much more than that. And I'm not going into many details, but some of you might have heard about homeostasis, and that's the idea originally from the resistance, from resilience, traditional view of bouncing back. Let's trying to go back, trying to bring our brain or trying to bring the person to where it was. Now we know there are many other functions in the brain, like allostasis, for example, which is actually taking our learning, taking our memory, taking those changes that we were talking in brain plasticity, using them and help us to cope, to growth, and to actually thrive when we are having many changes. So the idea it is that to be able to remove cynicism behaviors, to be able to decrease trauma, and then that will help to reduce resistance of the change and to dealing with all these multiple changes at the same time, we need to achieve that active resilience. And what we learn are 4 lessons from neuroscience that help us to achieve this active resilience, and that it helps us to adapt much more positively to change and to make change a positive experience. Basically, that's what we want, because our brain wired itself depending of experience is one of the reasons why it wired. There are many of them, but those 4 lessons are: we learned that our brain suffer of pain during times of change. That pain, it could be social pain, it could be psychological pain, and our brain perceives pain, physical pain, and the social pain and psychological at the same way. So every time that we're going through change, even if it's a good change, even if I perceive and I desire the change to happen, our brain will perceive pain. Why? Because all what pain is an alarm system that we have that it tell us, hey, there is something wrong. I don't know how it will be this environment, and therefore I'm going to send you a signal of discomfort so you move away from it or you do something about it. So that comes with any change. With physical change, if I put my hands into the fire, right? Or what it does, I'm having an uncomfort sensation, which is pain, so I remove my hands of fire. It is exactly the same. If I'm going through change, even if I want the change, even if I desire the change, it is something different. The brain still say, hey, there is something different here. I don't know what it will be the new way of working or the new way. So come out. So that's the first resistance that we have. The second lesson that we have, it's about energy. We know our brain consumes so much energy. It is the organ that consumes the most of the energy. It consumes about 20% of our total energy. And as a result, we all know here, working with change, that change consumes a lot of energy from us. It demands a lot of energy. And the main reason that it demands a lot of energy is because the uncertainty that it's coming. Even if I try to help with certainty and to put some certainty, there is something new. And as a result, the brain needs to start to using much more what we call the prefrontal cortex. And this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is the one that look at the future, the one that look at the planning, get overwhelmed. And it consumes a lot of energy. And as a result, also we resist change because it's taking too much of our energy. And the other lesson that we learn is our brain, and it's not only the brain, a lot of the organs of the human being likes and work very nicely through fluctuations. Probably we see it much more clear with the heart, right? The heart usually have fluctuation, up, down, up, down. If it's a straight line with that, if it's so high, there is an arrhythmia, a tachycardia. It is the same with the brain. That's what we learn. And those fluctuations, those up and downs, those peaks and valleys help us to build resilience. And it helps us to build what we were talking earlier, active resilience. We need to go into the very high levels of adrenaline, of cortisol, of dopamine, of many hormones and neurotransmitters, but we need to let them go down. If they carry on up, and up, that is where the bad adaptation that we were talking about happen. If they go up and down in a harmonical way, that is how our brain is wired. So that is the other lesson that we learn, and I'm going to pick up on that when we talk about practical applications. And the last lesson is about the error. Our brain usually always compare expectations versus what I got. Very much expectations versus the actuals. And if there is a difference between expectations and the actuals, it's going to send a signal, which is called a prediction error signal. And that prediction error signal is the mechanisms of learning. And those is what underpin cynicism. If I never meet my expectations, and having my expectations could be personal expectations, my own values expectations, organizational expectations. If there is always discrepancy and I don't talk about them, and I don't do anything about that, that is where cynicism and lack of trust also comes on. So based on those four lessons that we learn, I create this model, which is a framework that it helps us to reduce that cynicism and to create this active resilience and to actually facilitate change from the resistance perspective. So it have these four domains, and the idea is using those four domains, now that we are aware of what happened, and trying to do something about it. And then each of the domain have different dimensions. For example, what can we do if we know that change causes pain? What can we do? We can do two things. We can change the perception of pain proactively, And or we can, on the top of change the perception of pain, we can also increase pleasure. Why is that? Because when we increase pleasure, our brain release something called endorphins. And endorphins are there to block pain. Right? So we need to find systematical ways and practical, natural ways through our behavior and through our systems and the way we manage change to trying to release those endorphins out there. And that's what we call increased pleasure. And by doing that, we're reducing the level of pain as well. We also know that if we do something about what we call oxytocin, which is a chemistry that it comes as a result of bonding, engagement, by having those high levels of endorphins, we are going to increase also pleasure and we are reducing pain. So there is a lot we can do that. And I'm going very soon to go into the practical tips, but I just wanted to introduce those dimensions so it makes more sense. Let me also introduce in terms of the energy. What can we do if we know that our brain consumes so much energy during times of change? Is there anything that we can do to save energy? What could we? And coming soon to the practical way. But this is for you to start thinking. How can I save energy in my stakeholders? How can I save energy within my team? And on the top of that, what can I do to release energy from our brain? And we know that there are many practical ways, again, that we can help with that. One of them is we can try to release adrenaline, which it might sound like, oh, adrenaline is stress. But there is the good side of the stress that if we control it and we are applying brain-friendly practices, we get the advantage of the adrenaline. If we apply the peaks and valleys that we were talking about and we let the adrenaline go down and up, we get the good side of it. We can also release adrenaline by helping dopamine. Dopamine is that neurotransmitter that it comes when we are excited, when we are looking towards something. So if we do something about it, it helps as well. And then we were talking about the peaks and valleys. Even if we are the more excited, even if we have the best cocktail, as I say, of neurotransmitters and hormones on the top, our brain will adapt, will maladapt. And that's are probably people will say, well, even if you are fully rewarded, even if you are all excited, our brain will maladapt. Yes, that's probably the basis of addictions, right? And if, on the other hand, I'm so much under stress, threat, my brain will adapt, will maladapt? Yes. The only way that we don't maladapt is by fluctuating, by peaks and valleys. And then in terms of the error, the lessons from the error is we need to try to reduce that mismatch between reality and expectations. And most importantly, we need to try to release what we call positive error signal. So I think that's probably enough in terms of the theory. If you want to hear more about the theory, I think there is a book that I write together with Melanie. It's called Neuroscience for Change at Work. Here we explain very much detail all the science behind. This is just a quick introduction to be able to move now to some practical tips. So let's pick up to the first dimension, which was reduction of pain. What can we do? And again, I think PEPE Model offer about 33 different practical tips and strategies aligned to these four A dimensions that we were talking about. But the first one is about what can we do to change that perception of pain. One of the strategies, and I think is probably the basis for every other strategies, it's about psychological safety. So what do we need to do to reduce that perception? Is trying to increase psychological safety. How do we do that? Well, we know that psychological safety comes with individuals feel no, they don't feel scared, they don't feel that they are going to be blamed by something that it went wrong. They are not going to be judged. So we can do something. we can try to avoid this blaming culture. It doesn't mean we are not going to promote quality. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean, oh, now we need to allow all many mistakes to come. No. Now we need to avoid is the blame. And by doing that, slowly, mistakes, we start to learn from the mistakes, right? And we start to promote trust. But how can we do that, right? And the how to comes at habit level. And that is where behavioral change really become important. For example, if we become much more humble, what do I mean? If we can start to share mistakes openly, then that will be mirrored through our team. That could be mirrored through the organizations. And that doesn't happen overnight, right? But sharing mistakes openly is one of the biggest habits that it will help us to reduce perception of pain through time. And there are habits, another habit we can create for that is how behaviorally, how do I address conflicts, right? If we create that habit of addressing conflicts from a constructively perspective, from a support perspective, then we are also mirroring and sending signals to the brain that, oh, I feel safe here. Yes, there are conflicts as part of the natural change. Change are characterized by conflict and disagreement, right? But if I have habits within the organization and within the individuals to address them more supportively, then we reduce that perception of pain. So this is one of the examples that we have for reducing that perception of pain. It could be also what do we do systematically within my team or when I am managing change to make sure I encourage people to actually share mistakes openly. And we can go all the way for creating repositories of mistakes. We could go all the way to just have weekly meetings. And to be honest, some methodologies help with this more than the other ones, right? So for example, within Agile methodologies, we tend to have after every iterations, every 2 weeks iterations, we tend to meet and to reflect how it went. It doesn't mean we always approach it positively and not necessarily we share the mistakes. I have heard a lot people talking about, okay, what did we learn from something that it went wrong? I would actually challenge that. And the habit is not what did we learn, but what was it good about it? It's not only about what did we learn, because if we could have learned a lot of things, that is the first step. This is already positive. So this is but there is an extra step. Is what was it good about it? And I start to create those repositories. And if I start to promote that, that's how we start to increase psychological safety. So let me introduce another example. This in the case of taking the second dimension, which is about increasing pleasure. How can we do to increase more pleasure when we are in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of announcement or implementing change, right? And many of them. And I would say one of the strategies, as I say, there are many strategies linked to each of them, but one of them is, what can I do to increase the sense of belonging? Why is that? Because we know from neuroscience that when people feel that they are part of something, I am part of the in group, our brain will release oxytocin. And oxytocin is that peptide, that neurochemistry, that it will help us to reduce physically the levels of stress. And at the same time, it will increase the perception of pleasure. So I need to do something about releasing oxytocin. And the best way is trying for people to feel that they are part of the in group. So how can I do that? How can I increase sense of belonging? For example, and these are just some examples, if I facilitate as a change manager or leader managing change, I need to facilitate this collaboration between departments, right? Trying to talk between them. That many times we don't see it, especially if we have restructuring. Sometimes I don't communicate, don't facilitate that communication, right? And one of the reasons is because we don't have psychological safety. We don't know how to do it. Or, it's this competition. It is this level of status that I want to keep high, right? So then I need to create habits to help for that. And I need to promote that people volunteer for those cross-functional projects. We need to try to create a small project within change that involve people within different departments, right? Including the end users, because that is a lot what it tends to happen. If I leave the end users to the end, they are not benefiting from the oxytocin from the beginning, and they don't feel they are part of the in group. So I need to, from the very, very beginning of the changes and at any stage as well. It is not only, okay, you are part of the in group, and then I forget about the people really need to feel that. And one way to do it is also creating habit of sharing rituals, right? There is a lot of neuroscience research about what rituals do to our brain. We are animals. We are humans of rituals, and anything that comes as a rituals actually increase the pleasure, reduce levels of stress. So small and consistent, right? No big rituals, small and consistent. Small. I give you an example. We can have a rituals on the Wednesday to get together to talk about good things of the week. Yes, we are in a mess at the moment. There are many things not working, but on the Wednesday at 11, from 11 to 11:15, uh, we're going to do this. And I know in not all the, here I'm just giving examples, but I have been seeing this implemented in organizations very well. There is the challenge, obviously, that sometimes we cannot commit specific times. Then we can find different rituals. It is not the Wednesday at 11 because it's not the best day, but maybe Friday at the end of the day. Or we could have a ritual of sending emails. We can have a ritual of asking for positive feedback, for example. How many of us ask and encourage other people to ask, what did it go well? Is anything that it went well today? And asking, promoting. As I say, this needs to be done at a habit level. And creating habits happen because the people want to create them, or because we have created an environment, we have a system and processes that can help people to create those habits and those routines. I give you another example with a different dimension, which is the energy. This is a very interesting one. Is we know change consumes a lot of energy. So what could we do? We need to help the brain to spend energy in the important. What do we mean with that? Is we need to try to avoid overloading. And we might have heard this a lot of times. So how do we do that? What about if we provide the right information at the right time? I invite you to think about this before we make an announcement of change, or before we as change managers are having the meetings for discussion, before we are having these milestones to discuss milestones, before we even have a meeting. Is just questioning and just creating habits again. That's where the habits becomes important. Just ask yourself, are we asking stakeholders, for example, to focus on too many details too early? Because if we're doing that, what is going to happen is all the stakeholders will say, oh, and how will be end users working with this software? Where will be the input? Where will be the output? And we are just very early. So we need to focus at the right detail. Now, if we don't provide enough detail, we are also causing overwhelming, but the overwhelming comes from uncertainty. So if we only provide a big picture and that's it, people will start, well, but how will it happen? What is this, right? So it is about finding that sweet spot. And this is a habit, as I say. Every time that we go into a meeting, let's create that habit. How I work with PEPE model is I even included with our milestones. I included within my change program. PEPE is not a change methodology. It's an approach to change. Having said that, no, because it's an approach doesn't mean I don't include it with my daily routines or with my task that I need to do or with my milestones. I should actually write a section when I work as a consultant helping organizations to implement all these PEPE model. And we have a section with our change plan called brain-friendly practices. And people like to call it brain-friendly. Some people like to call it, people even put numbers, right? So the idea is within those brain-friendlies, then I say, habit. And people always question, is this the right amount of information? It is not. What is it? We should be considering having meetings where we say, how are we going to communicate this change, right? I give you another example using the dimension 8, which is about error. And it is about releasing positive predictions, error signals. You remember, as I introduced, error is our brain usually release what we call signals of errors. And this signal of error could be positive or negative, depending if I match expectations or not. So one of them to release predictions error signals is about bringing familiarity. How do I bring familiarity within the change and why it's important? Because anything new, our brain is not expecting it. And therefore, I'm not matching that. I'm not matching I'm always going to have this mismatch between expectations and actuals. Now, familiarity help us to create that match and to reduce that mismatch. How can we do that? Well, we need to ensure that we have habits where we identify and we reinforce what it is not changing. My experience is when we are working with change, and we do it with the best intention, especially if it's a change that we believe is going to bring a lot of benefits to everyone. Even in those cases, we usually come and focus in the change. There is a good step, we focus also in the benefit. This is important. But even the benefit, we are focusing what is changing, right? And when people have cynicism, people don't believe in the benefits. Even some of the people who will be working in change will not be there in 1 year time when all the benefits happen. I might be thinking I'm gone by then, right? So yes, I need to focus obviously in benefit, but more than that, or on the top of that, I need to also focus and to calm that error in the brain that at the end causes pain. And the way to do it is what it is not changing. And invite you to think here that most of the changes, even if everything is new, there is something that remains the same. And to me, this is one of the most powerful advice and tips that we can do. Another way to also release positive predictions error signal, for example, is about providing positive feedback. Here we talk about positive feedback again. Every time that I provide a positive feedback, our brain release those predictions, those positive predictions errors, because it helps for learning. We have this belief that we learn by the developmental feedback that we get. Which, yes, if people are very open to listen to them, we improve. But evidence shows that we learn more by positive feedback. So if I provide positive feedback, oh wow, Tibisay, your presentation went really well because it was a good mixture between theory, practical, you did this, you did that, and that detail. I learned from it. I know next time I'm going to do it on the same way, or even better, I'm going to reinforce what it wants, right? And that is causing the brain to release those positive error signals and to learning from it. And it helping with creating this active resilience that we were talking about. So that is for rare. And then just to finish with another practical, I wanted to cover the peaks and valleys because I think this is the key of the resilience, active resilience that we say. It is how do we do for people to have good levels, high level of stress, but then go down. We need the stress, right? I know there is a lot of people saying, no, we need to try to reduce stress. Yes, we need to avoid that it becomes chronic. We need to avoid the toxic part of the stress, but we need it because if people don't challenge themselves, if I don't put myself in with reasonable levels of adrenaline and cortisol, I will not learn how to operate when everything is moving, right? So I need to do that. Now I need to make sure it goes down. I need to make sure the levels of stress goes down. And this is what we usually don't do. And that's why the stress becomes chronic, which basically chronic stress is just a bad adaptation, coming back to brain plasticity. It's just a bad adaptation physically of our brain, and it keep now having cortisol in a constant way. But cortisol follow beautifully, naturally these rhythms of peaks and valleys. Our natural way that cortisol works, if we are not under chronic stress, is level of cortisol goes high very early in the morning, because we need cortisol to support us in the day to day, to release glucose, to reduce inflammation in ourselves. We need a little bit. So naturally goes up to support our challenge of the day. And then as the evening and the night goes down, it goes into the valleys. And ideally, levels of cortisol goes to the lowest around 11, 12 midnight. So if we follow that, then we are getting the advantage of the adrenaline, the cortisol when we need it, but avoiding the bad effect. And so what can we do for that? One of the strategies is about mind wandering. Um, some of you might have heard about mind wandering as something negative, right? And that probably I have read so many books that it says, oh, we need to avoid mind wandering because that helps people to just go over and over their problems. It could be, right? But if we frame well the mind wandering, if we implement it and create the habits within a positive context, mind wandering have a lot of benefits. There is a lot of research that it sounds that it demonstrates that an structure, well structured within a positive environment of mind wandering, can help to increase creativity, can help to increase problem solving and innovation. So how can I do it? One of them is, for example, normalize and encourage break. Trying to include within our habits, trying to set aside specific moments to let our mind wander. Used to be a lot of executive toys. You remember those toys that people used to have? I still exist, but people now the telephone took over. Those toys that used to be a little ball, pendulum going up, down, up, down. How many of you got one of these in the desk these days? Not many, right? Get them. I have a fish tank next to me and I see the bubbles and my office is full of them because there is a contest that I like. I need that, right? We believe this is distractions. We need those distractions to go down. So that's just examples of the different strategies. So I hope those practical examples have helped. I'm going to open the floors to Q&A. If you want to hear more, I think there is the new book that I wrote together with Melanie Frankel, Neuroscience for Change at Work. Also, this PEPE model has been endorsed by the Academy of Neuroscience and Education. I wanted to make sure it had a really ground foundation in terms of neuroscience and the brain. There is a certification as well that APNG International is accredited, which is called Neuroscience for Change. I provide some of them. I have courses together with Melanie, not only me, but others, trainers who have been trained and have been certified by PEPE Model are also providing that. So it's a good certification to have. And very soon, mid next year, we're going to have a hub where there is going to be diagnostics, tools, measurements about these about those 8 dimensions and the 4 domains. Are we too much in pain? Are we not? Are we being effective implementing some of the strategies or not? So I think that's for me. I'm going to open the floor for questions. Anybody? I have seen the chat. Sorry, I haven't been able to catch up with all the chat. Anyone? Jocelyn, is any question?
Thank you very much for that presentation, Tibi. I know I've seen a similar one from yourself before, but I always enjoy listening to you around the topic of neuroscience, so thank you for that. Just a quick question, if people are interested in the certification for the Neuroscience for Change course, can they find details on the APMG website for that course?
Yes, they could. So there is all the details in, let me just put here the website that is called pepeneuroscience.com. This is a website, it is the home of PEPE. If people want to know more, I think there is one program, there is one course coming on the 14th and 15th of January. If you specifically would like to join that, it's going to be delivered by Melanie and I together. And I think you can get a 20% discount. So please do send me an email if specifically you want to join the one on the 14th and 15th of January. My email, I show you my email here, is Vera@sparklingperformance.com.
Excellent, thank you very much. And if you want to take that course, will you automatically get access to the new digital hub suite that's coming, or is that like a separate subscription?
Yeah, that will be separate. It's coming in kind of April, May. We are hoping that it will come. It will be a separate subscription, but obviously, actually, to be able to get the hub, you need to be certified by APMG because you need to know how to work with the 8 dimensions. I think most of the investment is in the course itself. The hub, I think, is because it's a tool that will be there. It's not as big investment. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Just having a look in the chat. I know there was a comment from one of our attendees, Alina. So she said, yeah, I do feel bad to give people stress when I'm changing things. Sometimes I avoid implementing things because of watching people stress and succeed less. So not seeing the changes through.
Yeah. Sorry, Jocelyn, I missed what you say.
So there was a comment in the chat.
Yes.
Just somebody making reference to the fact that they do feel bad to give people stress when they're changing things. Sometimes they actually avoid implementing things because of watching people stress and succeed less. So hence they don't see the changes through in the end because of that.
Yeah, and what I would say in this case, we cannot feel bad about giving or putting some deadlines or pushing in what we need to do. As long as we have psychological safety, so people don't feel scared that if they don't do it, they are going to be penalized for that. I think that those are the bases that we need to make sure this exists, that this psychological safety exists before we start to push too much, right? And the other one is, yes, we push them, but we also need to create strategies for the level of stress to go down. We need to create meetings. We need to have celebration. Celebration is a great strategy. So we need to have celebrations, that those celebrations increase level of oxytocin and reduce the stress, and we help to go to the valleys. So it's a great comment. Yeah.
And we do have a question from Tim. So he said, there'll always be people within the changing team who sort for difference. They like new things over sameness. How can you allow them to help lead the change while dealing with those who prefer sameness, i.e. it's resistance to change, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And what I would say is what we spoke earlier, let's focus on what it is not changing. Especially people who like new things. We are so excited. I'm one of them who like change. And I'm so excited about new things coming and about all the benefits that I tend to talk a lot about them. So the people who prefer to stay calm, they are not necessarily on board. So we need to do both. Even if we like change, we need to make sure we highlight the other ones as well. So that's what I would say. Don't feel, obviously, I think we have to communicate benefit, we have to communicate change, but we need to compensate as many as we can of what remain the same.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. A lot of positive comments in the chat. Thanking you. It's giving a lot of people food for thought. Kate said that she can definitely see herself in some of the dimensions. So it's given her lots of thinking prompts for future changes. So I think it's great that people can actually take the practical elements away from this and obviously try and apply those in their own working practices.
Thank you. And what I would say also is, and I'm going to put here the wheel of, sorry, I'm going to put here the wheel. Today we have covered some of the practical strategies, but I invite you also to come with your own ideas. What can I do to reduce pain? Now that you know pain is one of the biggest elements there, what can I do to help others to feel less pain? Right? What can I do to increase a little bit of pleasure, of endorphins? What can I do to save energy now that you know? So you can also trying to challenge yourself. I will challenge you today to come with your own ideas based on A of the A dimensions. And thank you for all the positive feedback. Sorry, Jocelyn, I got deep dive into them when you were talking to me, and that's why I missed you earlier and I asked you to repeat. And thank you for that. I can see Alina say lack of creativity. Why? Explain more. Oh, that is a great question, Alina. Usually, creativity comes when we feel what we call rewarded, right? When we are not under threat, when we don't have high levels of stress. A lot of research in neuroscience usually creativity comes from what we call insights, those moments of aha, those moments that I'm working how to figure out, and bim, come these illuminations. We know those moments of aha don't happen when I am focused, when I'm stressed, when I'm working. And so I invite you to think, when do they usually happen? They usually happen when I'm taking shower, when I'm running, when I'm not thinking about it, when I went to sleep, when I'm talking to a coach, when I'm talking to a friend. And that is where creativity happens. So why the lack of creativity is because if we are on and on and on all the time, we don't have the downtime time that we were talking about. If we don't have this mind wandering time, right? Those insights will not come. Some of them will come, but you are leaving it to the lack of people. And especially will not come when we need them. So I hope this answered your question, Alina. So we need to try to promote those insights.
Excellent. I think Alina also added, what types of trauma have you seen come up when trying to implement change?
Yes, it's basically the trauma is that take us into that sad mood. Our limbic system is so sensitive, right? And very much the trauma is, oh, I'm going again into this. There is that fear that it is like, oh, I'm going to something else again that it required too much effort and I don't see the benefit. Or it might not even get to the end because a new person will come and change it, or a new software will come before I implement it. Right? So it is that is that trauma, it is that fear, like, oh, here we go again. Right, that, and people have to deal with that. Another trauma that I see is especially when there is restructures. People, as a result of any restructuring, some people are let go or some people leave, and the people who stay is the one who remain with the trauma, right? Because probably it was not done in the best way. It was a lot of stress at the moment, and the people who stay is the people who now need to deal with a new change. The others went, but people stay with that. So those are the type of traumas that I see.
Thank you, Tibby. Thank you for those great questions as well. So we are coming to the end of our session this afternoon. I would like to draw your attention just to a link that has been put in the chat for a feedback form. So we do invite you to complete that feedback form if you can, just to give us some thoughts about the session today, so we can take those into account for our future offerings. So it should only take you a couple of minutes, and we'd really appreciate that. So thank you. I haven't seen any more questions come in. So all that's left for me to do is thank you again, Tibby, for delivering your session today. That's been excellent. Thank you. And thank you to all our attendees. Lovely to see you as always. So please keep an eye on the website for updates on community webinars and training sessions. If you do have any questions, obviously, please do drop us a line, contact us anytime. So thank you very much. I can see a couple of hands going up. I'm not sure they go up, down. Thank you.